Hi, this is Tom Salemi from OIS-TV. I'm happy to be joined by Megan Baldwin, CEO and Managing Director of Opthea. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here.
Great to have you at OIS. So I want to just bring our viewers up to speed on Opthea. Now, you've got OPT-302, and that targets members of VEGF. I'd like you to get into how it differs from some of the other treatments out there that target the VEGF family.
Sure. So our molecule OPT-302 it's a biologic inhibitor. It looks actually quite similar to Eylea, but it actually targets other members of the VEGF family. So it targets VEGF-C and VEGF-D. So used in combination with the VEGF-A inhibitor, we can achieve a much more complete blockade of the VEGF pathway, which is important because we can cut down on that compensatory mechanisms that can actually cause incomplete responsiveness to using drugs like Lucentis, Eylea, Avastin that really only target one member of that very important pathway.
So this is like putting more fingers in the dike, essentially, to keep things...
It's basically shutting down more members of a family of molecules. Many people are aware of VEGF-A, but actually the family is more extensive than that. And there are other pathway members, such as VEGF-C and D, that signal through overlapping as well as independent pathways. So if we can shut them down, we can have a much more complete blockade of the mechanisms that can drive neovascular AMD.
Fascinating. So, and you've had some clinical success, at least some early trial success. You got a phase 1, phase 2A going on. I think it's at 14 clinical sites in the U.S. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, we're an Australian-based company, but we do all of our clinical trial work in the United States at this point. We've recently reported data from our first-in-man clinical study. It's a phase 1 dose escalation study. We showed that OPT-302 in wet AMD patients was very safe and well tolerated. But in addition to that, we saw very early but very encouraging evidence of clinical activity of OPT-302. So we saw improvements in visual acuity and reductions in retinal thickness that were over and above what we would expect with Lucentis alone. So we were very encouraged by that. And in addition to demonstrating some interesting data in naive patients, we also showed some evidence that we were able to improve outcomes in patients that have been treated with a VEGF-A inhibitor previously. So they're generally regarded as a difficult to treat patient population, but we saw some very interesting improvements in visual acuity and reductions in retinal thickness in those difficult to treat prior treated patients.
Now, I'm accustomed to seeing U.S. companies doing their trials OUS. Why are you doing your trial in the U.S.?
We're doing our clinical studies in the US in order to basically work with the leading clinical sites, the leading clinical ophthalmology experts. We're also able to access the very large patient numbers that you find in the United States, but it also enables us to interact in that global fashion with really some of the leading clinical experts in this field, and we think that's important. As we move through our clinical development program, we'll be expanding our global reach, so we'll be doing more clinical studies both in the EU as well as in the Australian sites as well. But for our initial study, we really did focus on the FDA and doing our sites in the US.
You must be, with all the travel to the U.S., you must be the executive class on Qantas or something like that.
I have a very good Qantas frequent flyer history, absolutely.
Good to hear. I'm glad you're being rewarded. What is your plan going forward? I know you had a combination therapy opportunity going into the phase 2B trial next year.
Yeah, so that's our longer term plan. So right now we are focused on just finishing up the phase 1/2A clinical study. We are recruiting additional patients into the phase 2A component of that first-in-man study. That's a dose expansion trial, so that's an additional 30 patients. We expect to report that out at the end of the first quarter in 2017. And then as we report that out, we're also planning to start that larger phase 2B clinical trial in wet AMD. So we're planning for that now. We expect to start that around about mid-2017, and that'll be a randomised controlled study in wet AMD patients testing OPT-302 as a combination therapy with Lucentis.
And how large a trial are we talking about, or both trials? How
well, we're currently designing the exact design of the study, but it'll be a randomised study controlling using OPT-302 as a combination agent with Lucentis at likely 2 doses, and then comparing that to Lucentis on its own. The exact size of the study we expect to report out or announce in the coming months.
Okay, well, we'll pay attention to that. Finally, I know you're very busy with all of this, but is there anything else going on up there we should know about?
Look, we're really focused now on the back of having reported really exciting, encouraging early stage data with our molecule. We're really in full mode for planning for the phase 2B clinical study. We've had a lot of interest in the results of that study, and we're also thinking about other indications that OPT-302 may indeed show or have some promise to improve clinical outcomes for patients. This is a molecule that we're focused on wet AMD, but it really could have potential use in other eye diseases as well, such as diabetic macular edema. So we're looking at those as additional follow-on strategies for the development of the molecule as well.
Terrific. Well, we look forward to tracking your story at OIS.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for joining us.